There's a dream from 2 years ago that was brought to remembrance, and I wouldn't think this would matter at this point and in the times we're in and how fast things are going. But the Lord kept bringing it back to mind, and He's used it to speak to me about something. I'm not sure I can share how it relates to me, but I still think it's um, informative and helpful. So, as you can see in the picture, the dream was about Queen Elizabeth, and so it was a sort of a banquet. It was kind of a dark room. It was candlelit, but still it was pretty dark, with a long table full of guests. And what I saw was this woman get up from the table and walk towards a sort of chimney where there was a mirror. Now, there was something on that chimney top, some kind of artifact. I wonder now if it could have been some sort of old clock, but I'm not sure. I had forgotten this part. Anyway, the main point of that dream, I think, was a detail that was shown to me because she looked at herself in the mirror. I think she had a crown, but I can't remember now. Um, that would make sense so that I was sure to recognize her. And it was one of those smoked mirrors where you can barely see the reflection. But what I saw is a sort of scarf, like the ones that they have for beauty pageants on one side, and it was teal blue. And on it was a breastpin with this exact pendant. So at the time, 2 years ago, I had no idea what this was, and it took me a while to get into this type of stuff. But now, with everything the Lord has shown me since, I can really make sense of it and start to sort of connect the dots with everything. So here you can see Prince Charles wearing this same pendant around his neck. And like I said, I've seen it many times since, even unrelated to the royal family in other countries, even in my own country or on a local scale, because it's also the symbol for the Medal of Honor, which is a military distinction, but in some cases it can be given for cultural reasons. So in that case, it usually has to do with the protection of heritage, including cultural. I think it's also called Legion of Merit. And as you can see on this picture here, this is the symbol for the 32nd degree of Freemasonry. This is called a Malta cross, and it goes back to the Knights Templar. They were a Catholic military order that dates back to 1119. They were based in Jerusalem, and they were also known as the Order of Solomon's Temple. They gained power through the Crusades and dissolved as such in the beginning of the 14th century. I will get back to that later in the video. As I'm making this video and looking for images, I'm also finding out about the Victoria Cross, and it strikes me as very similar as well to the Knight Templars. It's the same one on top of the crown, and you can see it here on the cape during the coronation ceremony. Let's continue with various associations of these symbols. This is the symbol or coat of arms for the Order of Malta, and it looks like a shield. Which brings us to Rothschild, which means red sign or red shield in German. Here you can see some more connections. This cross is also what appears on the flag to Switzerland, also the city of London. And if you see on that picture, it's the same symbol that the Queen is wearing. You can also see here on the left, Vatican Militia. On the 22nd of January 1506, 199 years after the arrest of Jacques de Molay in France, the Vatican created the Pontifical Swiss Guard. 150 Swiss soldiers under the command of Captain Caspar van Silenen of Canton Uri passed through the Vatican and were blessed by Pope Julius II. So in this slide you can see the Knights of Malta, Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and on the left you can see some of the famous members. So you have Rockefeller, Kissinger, Rothschild, Bush, father and junior. Here you can see the link between the Knights Templar and the Jesuits. Here you can see various Freemasons and Knights of Malta. Pope Pius XII, Anton Turkel, Intelligence Chief of USSR, William Donovan, Intelligence Chief of the US, OSS CIA, Reinhard Gehlen, Intelligence Chief of Nazi Germany, Heinrich Himmler, Nazi Germany, Winston Churchill, Hitler, and Stalin. So talking about the Legion of Honor, it's interesting to know it was created by Napoleon, who was a non-Freemason. Here we see the Masonic square and compass. And I found this image with the same symbol, and it's the Order of de Molay, referring to Jacques de Molay, who was the master of the Knights Templar, and he was ordered to be arrested by the Pope in 1307. The Order of the Knights Templar were accused of devil worship and sodomy. Before he died, he did confess to having denied Christ and spit on the cross. And apparently his last words were, "Let evil swiftly befall those who have wrongly condemned us. God will avenge us." Jacques de Molay was burnt on the stake in 1310, and in 1314, 54 other Knights Templar were also. There is a legend of cursed kings because of what he said. The king Philippe le Bel, his stepdaughters committed adultery, his 3 sons died a premature death, so it was the end of his dynasty, and there was a war that lasted close to a century. This is also where the superstition of Friday the 13th comes from, because that was the day that de Molay was put to death and spoke this curse. When the order went out by the Pope that all Templar Knights were to be arrested, thousands were rounded up and arrested on charges of heresy and burnt at the stake, whilst others dispersed across Europe seeking sanctuary. Some escaped to Spain, joining up the Calatrava and Alcantara. Some moved to Portugal and took on a new name, the Order of Christ. Others joined the Teutonic Knights of Germany, and some joined the Hospitallers, the stepping stone to the Knights of Malta. So still reading from this article regarding a potential connection between the Knights Templar and Switzerland. Therefore, in my opinion, a primitive farming country had received outside assistance, enabling them to protect their lands from invading warriors. The only answer that made sense. Templar Knights had escaped from France, crossed the border into Switzerland, and granted sanctuary, bringing with them their military expertise and Templar treasure, buying their way into this new country. The Templars were Europe's bankers from the 11th to the 14th century. Now, largest banking and financial institutions of Europe are located in Switzerland. Julius II called upon Helvetian soldiers in 1506, these mercenaries who would shape Italy's future, and were granted the title Defenders of the Church's Freedom. I'll read to you a comment from this article that I think is relevant. The majority of Jews rejected Jesus as their long-awaited Messiah. The believing Jews took the gospel to the world. God rejected the unbelieving Jews, and without his protection, their temple was destroyed in AD 70 by the Romans. Every Sabbath and every Passover since then, the unbelieving Jews pray, "Next year, Jerusalem." Over the years, they have made several failed attempts to rebuild the temple, i.e., AD 118, AD 264, and AD 640. The Templar Crusades were just another failed attempt to achieve this lifelong dream. The heads of the Knights Templar were Merovingian Gnostic Jews from Champagne in France. That is why the Templars' real mission to Jerusalem was to rebuild the temple. The ordinary Catholic Templar soldiers, however, were only told that they were taking Jerusalem for Jesus. That is what secret societies are all about, i.e., the ones at the bottom don't know what really is going on at the top. They had never read that Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it was, then would my servants fight." John 18:36. The Templars reappeared from underground as the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and you guessed it, their objective is to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Like the Catholic troops at the lower rungs of the Knights Templar, the Gentiles in Freemasonry, who are now honorary Jews, don't fully realize who is gaining at the top. The Masons logically had a vendetta against the union of church and state, i.e., Pope and King, who had destroyed their fellow Jewish Knights Templar in 1307. They started their attack on the old order of Pope and King by destroying the Jesuits in 1773, who were the protectors of the papacy. They then financed the French Revolution and took Louis XVI head off in 1794, and then took Pope Pius VI prisoner in 1789, where he died in captivity. From the French Revolution on, they have been creating wars in order to further their objectives. With a remedy after World War I, they gained entrance to Palestine. After World War II, they formed the Nation of Israel. After the Six-Day War, they captured Jerusalem. They are still trying to rebuild their temple with subservient American help. Their age-old dreams of ruling the world as God's chosen people from their temple in Jerusalem is being quietly achieved before our eyes. There are some scriptures that came to mind regarding this dream. Revelation 19:17-21. The beast and his armies defeated. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in the midst of heaven, "Come and gather together for the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses and those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great." I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him who sat on the horse and against his army. Then the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet, who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were cast alive in the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the rest were killed with the sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. Jeremiah 31:27-30. Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man and the seed of beast. And it shall come to pass that as I have watched over them to pluck up, to break down, to throw down, to destroy, and to afflict, so I will watch over them to build and to plant, says the Lord. In those days they shall say no more, "The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge." But every one shall die for his own iniquity. Every man who eats the sour grapes, his teeth shall be set on edge. Ezekiel 18:10-13. If he begets a son who is a robber or a shedder of blood, who does any of these things and does none of those duties, but has eaten on the mountain, or defiled his neighbor's wife, if he has oppressed the poor and needy, robbed by violence, not restored the pledge, lifted his eyes to the idols, or committed abomination, if he has did usury or taken increase, he then live? He shall not live. If he has done any of these abominations, he shall surely die. His blood shall be upon him. Revelation 14:17-20. Reaping of the grapes of wrath. Then another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and threw it in the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city. Blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles, 1,600 furlongs.